What you're about to see is a record of the historic meeting of the Flying SCOTSMAN and Pendennis Castle locomotives in Perth, Western Australia. The journey starts in Sydney on the New South Wales rail tracks, through Broken Hill, onto national rail tracks to Port Augusta, where the Scotsman had some trouble with her air supply. Then continues on national rails across the vast desert to Tarcoola, junction for Alice Springs in Central Australia. Then out across the 297-mile straight rails across the Nullarbor, to Kalgoorlie and Western Australian standard gauge tracks, through Merredin to Northam, 60 miles from Perth, to where a narrow gauge train had brought 400-odd enthusiasts to travel back with the Scotsman to Perth. It will take Scotsman 6 days to travel the 2,300 miles and then execute a series of 5-day tours around Perth. In the meantime, Pendennis Castle was travelling by road transport, 1,000 miles from the Pilbara district to Perth to meet with the Flying Scotsman. These two locomotives last stood side by side 64 years ago at the Wembley exhibition in the United Kingdom. The year, 1925. And the best examples of English steam locomotives of their time. They have never coupled or worked together. Thousands of enthusiasts swarm around the Scotsman, marvelling at this superb example of engineering from another time. Westward ho! And then we get lucky. We are privileged to ride in the cab of the Scotsman. An inspiring and unforgettable experience travelling along the West Australian dual gauge 3 feet 6 inches and 4 feet 8.5 inches tracks towards Perth. Through 2J and the Avon Valley. A gentle downgrade track for about 50 miles to Midland. We have in tow 10 coaches, 2 water gins, a wagon of coal and a crew car. All this has been hauled from Sydney, approximately 2,300 miles. Flying Scotsman has been followed by a motorcade of cars and vans and is being watched by thousands of excited line-side spectators. This has been a feature of the Scotsman's journey. Five men constantly feed coal to maintain the steam pressure, which on the Scotsman is 220 pounds per square inch. Guildford Station is approximately 7 miles from the Perth terminal. In the meantime, Pendennis Castle has arrived at the Perth terminal and many enthusiasts wait in readiness for the historic meeting with the Flying Scotsman. And this after 64 years. These two locomotives last stood side by side 64 years ago at the Wembley exhibition in the United Kingdom. The year, 1925. After the celebrations, the Scotsman reverses light engine to the Forestfield yards. At this point, the crew suspect that the Scotsman has developed a serious malfunction, and arrangements are made to dismantle the steam valves to the cylinders to assess the damage. Now, the Scotsman is approximately 16,000 miles from home, 2,300 miles back to Sydney, and approximately 14,000 miles by sea to the United Kingdom. The Scotsman's future, and in fact the whole series of day tours, now appear in jeopardy. Let's hand the narration over to Jack Stanbridge, our cameraman and producer, who will report firsthand from the Forestfield yards.
Here we can see the damaged right-hand steam valve piston and rings. The valve cylinder is also badly scored and must be rebored. A new firebrick arch was also needed. Flying Scotsman was scheduled to run tours in 35 hours' time. Pendennis Castle may have had to take over these tours of 5 consecutive days. So urgent repairs were definitely needed. A portable boring clamp was employed to bore out the valve cylinder. A new piston for the steam valve was needed and new rings required. Dedicated workmen worked day and night to finally complete the repairs in time to run the tours.
Wind it back in. Wind it back in. Wrong way. Okay, keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Lord McAlpine, who happened to be in Perth at this time, looks on as repairs proceed. Flying Scotsman on the move again.
The Flying Scotsman, triumphant and only hours after repairs were completed, here seen passing the Midland workshops and moving the first tour train of happy enthusiasts. The Scotsman is running like a clock, and smiles are the order of the day, despite running into a little wet weather. Magnificent footage of a magnificent locomotive as we pace the Scotsman near 2J. Here we see the Scotsman being turned for the return trip on the avant-yard dual-gauge turntable near Northern. A Western Australian L-class locomotive passes Scotsman with a freight train. Returning to the Perth terminal in anticipation of another day's touring. In the background, we can see a couple of Perth suburban narrow-gauge rail cars, ADA and ADG. This type have now been phased out of service. The Scotsman now gets a clearance to return to Forestfield Yards. Here seen passing through Mayland Station. Here we see extraordinary footage of the Flying Scotsman and Pendennis Castle coupled together for the first time and reversing to the Perth terminal for the first double-header run. The location is near the Forestfield Yards. The coupled locomotives are spotted reversing through the Mount Lawley station, which is near the Perth terminal. every day of the steam tours, thousands of spectators gathered to witness the spectacular workings of these locomotives.
People everywhere too, look.
People everywhere.
Hold your hat, that was the Indian Pacific train. Sit back and relax as the Scotsman and Pendennis Castle haul us through the beautiful Avon Valley. Once again, Pendennis and Scotsman are turned on the Avon Yard turntable for the return run to Perth after our double-headed run to Northam. This is a special day from Northam where we will witness limited parallel running of Scotsman and Pendennis utilising the Avon Valley passing loops.
Pull that lever.
Today, for some reason, the coupled locomotives were assembled in such a way it required some shunting and rearrangement, creating concern for some and photographic pleasure for others. Here we have a good view of the special water and coal jenny built for Pendennis Castle's use in the far north of Western Australia. Scotsman also made use of it on some of the tours.
Will you please keep off the line? We're going to move.
Our double-header is seen passing the Welshpool Road traffic flyover on the way to Fremantle. Again along the tracks near Jandakot, heading to Fremantle. At the port of Fremantle, the locomotives were divided to cross the dual-gauge rail bridge over the Swan River. Here, Pendennis crosses light engine over the Fremantle Bridge to the Leighton Yards. The Flying Scotsman reverses onto train in Fremantle. The Scotsman at rest. The location, the Esplanade station, which is close to the Fremantle fishing boat harbour. Passengers take the opportunity to eat lunch and enjoy old-fashioned hospitality. A wonderful day for the fans and organisers, and so we return to the Perth terminal. This is the fourth consecutive day of touring for the Scotsman around Perth. The Prospector is West Rail's standard gauge train to Kalgoorlie, located 375 miles east of Perth. The Prospector was the fastest passenger train in Australia when introduced to service. The Flying Scotsman train seen here on the Bassendean Strait and passing Midvale. On return to the Perth terminal, the Flying Scotsman poses for photographers in a historic session. In the background, we see suburban narrow-gauge diesel rail cars rattling past. Perth suburban trains are now modern narrow-gauge electrified units. On the fifth day of touring, the Locomotives double head to Fremantle via the dual gauge track through Jandakot. Pendennis alone now takes the train across the Swan River at Fremantle to the Leighton Yards. Meanwhile, the Flying Scotsman has been turned on a triangle at Coburn and now crosses the river, passing over the tourist boat Rottnest Islander, which is returning to Perth. Pendennis returns as light engine from the Leighton Yards. The Flying Scotsman returns with train to Fremantle across the Swan River, after which the passengers ate dinner to mark the end of a very successful and triumphant visit to Perth of two famous steam locomotives. The final day sees Flying Scotsman and Pendennis Castle double heading out and up the Avon Valley on their way to Kalgoorlie. Flying Scotsman continues on to Sydney, some 2,300 miles away, and the Pendennis Castle returns to Perth to prepare for a long journey home to the northwest of West Australia. Pendennis Castle's final run in the Perth area was arranged to start at Midland and then on to Northam. Here she is waiting at Midland for the passing of the Indian Pacific train, 3 days out of Sydney. It may be of interest to note that this area of rail operation is completely dieselised. Pendennis Castle on her returning run to Perth ran short of coal and was fired on old wooden sleepers until she arrived at a coal fuelling depot at Merredin. The Indian Pacific train, hauled by a Westrail L-class locomotive, approaches. The Indian Pacific train usually consists of 14 or more coaches and vans, plus flat wagons for passengers' motor vehicles. Today's includes, behind the locomotive, a prospector coach returning to Perth. With sadness, we watch Pendennis Castle's last performance for us.
Speeches, so we're going to have them. I'm going to call you all back, by the way.
Famous locomotive in the whole of the world today than the Flying Scotsman, and it's very great indeed, very tremendous to see it here in Western Australia and seeing such a great turnout of Western Australians to greet it. I'd like to thank all of those, Ian Willis particularly.
Pendennis Castle has been separated from her tender and is now being loaded onto a road transport in preparation for the long 1,000-mile return to the Pilbara base in the northwest of Western Australia. The Scotsman by now has arrived in Sydney and has been loaded onto a ship for return to the United Kingdom. Farewell, old-timers.